Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Welcome to Through a Scottish Prism. In the usual fashion, it's been a week since we last spoke, and I hope you and yours are all well, and thank you for taking the effort to climb up Mount Everest to get here. It's great to see so many of you here, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I know we're going to enjoy it. Let me firstly introduce my panel. I know you all know, but we have got our Qualities Officer, Yvonne. And in case you didn't know, we've got our Women's Officer for the Alpha Party. We've got Robert Slavin, more famously known for the Eagle Inn, but he's now our local authority. We've got young Robert Reid here, who is our up-and-coming star, who we expect great things of, who is also standing for the NEC, so make sure you vote for him. High up the list. Not completely high, if you know what I mean. High. So, without any further ado, who would like to ask the first question? Come on, don't be shy. Okay, there we go. Dave.
Yeah, there we go. So, myself and many others were at Perth and the party hustings. And every certain word being used, which was working online where the people had said that wrong.
Who wants to start talking about scummy Tories?
Scum is not a word that I would tend to use. I do not, though, object to other people using it, but I don't think that it's a good look for a political party. That said, I detest the values of the current Tory leadership, but I have friends in the Tory party who also detest their values. So there's something very wrong in the heart of politics within the United Kingdom, but I don't think that we need to use the word scum, because sometimes that debases us in a manner that's unnecessary, because there's an awful lot of other words that we could use, like cruel, harsh, greedy, and at times actually murderous in the context of the policies that we impose.
Gosh, this sounds like a quiz countdown. I disagree with my good friend Eva. I can think of plenty of four-letter words that I could use to call the Tories, but I come from, I was born in a place called Consett, County Durham, and it was a thriving community with a steelworks which supported 10,000 jobs from the steelworks and from subsidiary companies. And Margaret Thatcher and her McGregor sidekick said, "Turn it into a profit for 3 months running and we'll save it." And those men worked their puddings off and they turned the plant profitable for 6 months running, and they still axed the plant, devastated an entire community. You've had it in Scotland as well, and the same with the shipyards, the same with the car industry, the same with the pit industry. And they have destroyed people's lives. People have committed suicide because of Tory policies. So I could think of plenty of names to call them. Not their supporters, but I would reserve it for the politicians and for those who draw up these obscene policies, which are cruel and are barbaric. But when we're off air, if you come to me, I'll give you some four-letter words I can call them.
Before I pass this on to Robert, I would just say, I don't know how many of you read the article where before COVID it was announced, the Glasgow University study, where 290,000 British people throughout the whole UK had died prematurely because of Tory policies. So again, any four-letter words that you don't get from Yvonne, come and see me, I've got a few more.
Yeah, I'd probably tend towards Eva's position there. I think on the final or first day of conference, we had a fantastic motion at the end about free speech. And I think people should be free to say however they feel. And so I never decry anyone for using words like scum to describe the Tory party. I was in Perth as well, it's my hometown. And it was fantastic to see how many people were out there to send a message to the Tory party. And whether or not they use words like scum or even worse, which they absolutely did, I think we should actually ask about why they are using those words, because people are angry. I've never been to a kind of rally like that before where the real sense of anger that it ended up being Liz Truss was going to be imposed on people without our say-so. At the same time, while they continue to ignore the democratically expressed wishes of the people of Scotland through the elections we've had and the desire to have a referendum. So I wouldn't use it myself personally. I don't decry anyone that would, but really, there's plenty of worse words that could be said. I'll pass you on to my namesake.
Yeah, you're good. Well said, Rob. I mean, on this issue, I think Alex Salmon hit the nail on the head the other night there when we seen him on the TV. Winston Churchill called him it. You know what I mean? If it's good enough for Winston Churchill, it's good enough for the rest of us, isn't it? I was brought up at a time, I was lucky enough at the time. I started an apprentice plumbership. Thatcher had been in the job for about 2 or 3 years, I think, and seen the devastation she caused. I think scum's very light, to tell you the truth, when describing the Tories.
And who's next for a question? There we go.
Can I just say that football...
Ash or Rusty, who's going to ask?
I don't know, Rusty's trying to get at my line at the minute. As most of you are well aware, the disability benefits had been passed on to Scottish Government, the DLA, and the PIP is beginning to go through for adults. Now, there was a delay, it had been sent back to Westminster because of the delays, and we were told that it was going to be a more compassionate, a more caring, more considerate benefit system the new Scottish benefits would be. My daughter, who's with me at the moment, I received because she's a child, her PIP, our DLA, is now got the Scottish Benefit Agency, and I received a reward letter, which still tells me that there is, although she has a continuing eye condition that is not going to improve, I still have to redo the forums next year. Now, we were led to believe that things like that were not going to happen, but Scottish Benefit Agency is going to be telling the DWP is going to be telling the Scottish Benefit Agency when a review has to be done, and they have to review it.
My daughter is disabled and was awarded a lifetime award from the DLA. Then PIP came in and she had to be examined. A lifetime award because she is so disabled. And I've had to fill in form after form after form. It asks things like, can she pick up a box? The answer is yes, she can pick up a box, but she doesn't have a clue what to do with it. So you have to write these great big huge tirades about your child, and then they ask you if you've got anything else to say, and I always say the same thing. I say, every time I have to fill in one of these bloody forms, it reminds me just how disabled my child is, and it reminds me how sad I am that she has to put up with this and I have to do this. And I agree with absolutely. It's not compassionate.
I take my hat off to you both. Some years ago, when I still had the 2 feet I was born with, but couldn't walk very well, I applied for whatever it was at that stage, maybe it was DLA. And the reason it was refused, although I could barely walk, was I was described as being, I had such a level of stoicism that there was no real level of disability, and that was a bit of an eye-opener for me. However, after I lost my leg, I met at clinic very many people in similar circumstances to me, and one guy in particular had lost both his legs, and I kid you not, he was at a DWP assessment without his limbs on, sitting in a wheelchair, and he was told to stand up. Now, I know that happened. So I was so incensed, I decided to apply to be a judge in the Disability Appeals Tribunals, and passed the online exam, and then went to Edinburgh for a face-to-face interview, which included a mock appeal tribunal. And in effect, you have to sign, it's a few years ago now, a version of the Official Secrets Act, because if you saw the DWP regulations and rules as to the definitions of disability, you would be wanting to fly out the front door and get on the BBC and shout it for the rooftops, because it was utterly damning. You would have to be practically catatonic before you would have qualified. So the DWP regulations were horrific. I can say from personal experience that if you lose a leg and you have a prosthetic limb, it is deemed to be the equivalent of the leg you were born with, because that's what a prosthetic is. My arse, actually. So from a Scottish perspective, it pains me more than I can adequately describe without swearing again, to learn that people in Scotland, subject to the Scottish benefits system, are somehow still under the jurisdiction of what is another brutal and murderous regime in the form of the DWP. I could write a book about the people I've met at work that have these kind of issues, and I truly believed that Scotland was going to be better. And when I learned that the Scottish Government had actually asked for the rollout of welfare benefits to Scotland to be paused, I thought, well, there's a bit of an eye-opener. They want to run a country and they can't even run a benefits system. So let that be a lesson. The next time that the SNP and the current Scottish Government tell you they're going to do something, don't forget what they did with PIP.
What a mission following Yvonne speaking on an issue like this, and I struggle to add too much more, to be honest. As an able-bodied man, I've had really rarely any encounter with something like PIP, but the original questioner talked about a kind of caring, compassionate system, and that's what it should be, and that's what it's meant to be, but they are not words that are synonymous with the Westminster system or the DWP. And I think with this devolution of benefit, I think so many people, the reason the SNP kind of grew into what they were, there was a gradualist approach that people wanted. They saw the opportunity of electing a nationalist government in a devolved system to prove that we can govern ourselves and to prove to people that that we aren't too wee, too poor, too stupid, and we're more than capable of delivering what every other nation on earth delivers. And there is that real anger now, and I think it's part of the reason why the Labour Party has formed at the SNP, because in their years of government they have completely lost any sense of radicalism and any sense of where they came from. And it's become more of the same, more of the old Labour Party. The point on reassessment is absolutely absurd for somebody like yourself who is registered blind. Unless Jesus walks in this room tonight, things like that will not change. And to put people through the torture of having to continually put down the problems that your daughter faces, there's a completely inhumane approach to this. They treat people like they're cattle. And that is what the devolution settlement was there to do, to try and prevent that, to shield us from a Westminster system that simply doesn't care about the vulnerable people. And that's where the SNP have failed, and that's where I feel like the Alba Party have the people that can actually start to enact that change and be that more radical alternative. So I sense the anger and frustration, and all the work that people like Eva do in this party are just phenomenal, and I'm glad to see she's been re-elected today as the Equalities convener.
I'd just like to say I've got a certain empathy with the questioners, and what Eva was saying, my son has got special needs, and I remember trying to fill out the forms, and you need a PhD actually, and I actually felt the forms were more to catch you out than to help you. And I think that's the whole way the system's put down. They don't want to help you. They're just looking for an excuse not to give you what you really need.
Tick and cross.
Exactly, you know what I mean? That's all. It's a box ticking exercise, but I think something radical doesn't need to happen. As he's saying, if somebody's registered, I think if you fill out your forms, they should be saved. You've already answered them. No, if they've got to come back and look something, well, you've got it there. Don't get to fill it out again. The condition hasn't changed. Nothing's changed like that.
And then they say you've got to go to a tribunal to fight this, and you go to the tribunal, and then they say, have you got your lawyer with you? You think, nobody told me.
And again, I meant to bring, I think it touches on what my Auntie Everett was talking about in her speech today, and she was talking about addiction and stuff. It's out with that, it's not that the person is disabled or the filling in forms, it's the additional family as well, because it affects everybody. You know, there's some people who are severely disabled and not getting the help they need. So where do people go? They find it in a bottle, a bit of sauce in a bottle or something. But something needs to change, and I think the only way we're going to do that is keep pressing it, but there has to be consultation with people themselves that are going to, they're going to take heed of it.
But there is another side to it. There's carers, and my daughter is looked after by my son because I'm now too old to do it. I can't cope with it. I know it's ancient, be old. So he looks after her, and he gets carers allowance.
Yep.
But he also does, because she goes to a unit, he does a few hours work. But it's only because we've raised the wages, right?
No.
He's not allowed to work the same amount of hours anymore, because if he does work the same amount of hours, he goes over the amount where he's allowed carers allowance. So
it's a convoluted process. It's a convoluted process.
He wants to work and he can't because it affects, and he can't work all the hours because he's a carer.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Oh, as I say, I've got every empathy with you, and I just hope that somebody's listening and we can make the system better.
I think it's worth noting, if you remember, when ATOS came out, brought in by the Labour Party in Glasgow, the good Glasgow folk called ATOS Lourdes, because you went in disabled and come out fit for work. It's disgusting. Yeah, you're right, the hypocrisy. There was someone up in one of the SNP people said they had Tourette's because they swore a lot. I thought we should go to Barhead. Everyone's got Tourette's. Including me, especially me. Right, we have another question here. Alan Petrie here's got a question for us. Hopefully it'll work this time, Alan. No. Take this and bring it back.
Now, we have the most evil, but also the most weakest Tory government in Westminster just now. The SNP are demanding a general election instead of withdrawing from Westminster and just setting up a constitutional convention. Now, if there is an election, the likelihood is Labour will take control. Labour will then change the Equalities Act, and the women of Scotland will lose the defence that they have under that act. How do you think we should get that message out to the people?
I said the best message we get is vote for independence.
I am not convinced that Labour will romp in, because Keir Starmer is Tory light, and all those working class people that voted Tory in anger look at him and they just see another Tory. So what's happening over the border is, that there is a political crisis, because at least in Scotland we've got choice, and that's something that they really don't have. Although the Greens in England aren't as lunatic as the Greens up here, but I don't have great faith like you know, in Starmer. I mean, Starmer can't even tell us what a woman is. And once they wake up to the fact that this is a huge issue, a huge political issue, and people are starting to wake up to it now, maybe there will be a positive impact for women south of the border, but I just really fear what could happen if Labour in its present form gets in. And we should, or the SNP should be focusing on independence more than ever. You know, you can't fix what's broken, and Westminster is smashed at the moment. So, you know, let's focus on something that we can fix, and that's push for independence, and not get sucked further into the mire that's Westminster.
There's no doubt that the gender recognition bill has been one of the most divisive pieces of legislation ever introduced to the Scottish Parliament, and it shames me to the absolute depths of despair that a government I helped to elect and for whom I voted last year can do this to the people of Scotland. It doesn't matter what way you cut it, a man will never become a woman and vice versa. The whole reason why gender recognition and reform was spoken about in the first place was primarily to enable people to have what was in effect, in their minds, a same-sex marriage. Now that we have same-sex marriage, there is really no need for, I would say, it's not the party's line, but it's my line, there is no need for gender reform or gender recognition at all, and we should pause the current legislation and have a debate which is a real one, an honest one, a direct one, with a lot of scientific information instead of bunkum created on the surface by daft young men and women who appear not to know what they're talking about. I'll debate them until kingdom come, but none of them have ever seen fit to volunteer to face me and Yvonne and the likes of us in such an open debate. So here's your invitation again, boys and girls of the Greens and the SNP, and I'm looking right at you, Dante Lopez and all your pals. Don't bother your backside jumping on us on Twitter. Come and talk to us face to face an audience, face the Scottish people, face the Scottish men and women who know what men and women are. So leaving that to one side temporarily, it is grossly offensive to me as a citizen of Scotland that we have to look to Westminster legislation for any form of salvation or protection, but unfortunately right now that is exactly what the Equality Act is, and I hope it is what the Equality Act remains up until we get our independence, because as others, including Yvonne, have rightly said, the priority for the Scottish Government should be what is the priority for the people of Scotland, and it is removing us from Westminster so that there are no more MPs elected from Scotland to attend Westminster. It's been said 1,000 times already today. We went down there to settle down, no up, and that's what's wrong with the gang that are there just now. And hell mend them, hell mend the SNP if they believe that the people of Scotland will re-elect them to go down there for another few years on a gravy bus or a gravy train. Your time is up, Miss Sturgeon. Do the job you were elected to do and get us the hell out of the union now.
I'm really getting stuck with it tonight, following you every time, aren't I? Please do. I'll just address kind of Alan's point originally about the UK government and the potential rise of the Labour Party. There won't be an early general election, there's no doubt about that. Not even Liz Truss is stupid enough to go for an early general election, so we have until 2024. And of course, at 2024 in that election, that'll be a plebiscite for an independence referendum. We believe the SNP when they committed, without fear or favour, that this will be a plebiscite for referendum. So we have to hold them to that commitment, and we cannot let them backtrack on that in any way, shape or form. I seen Mary Hunter tweet a few months ago that a plebiscite referendum, it's not a declaration of independence, it's actually just yet another mandate, and we've heard that far too many times. So we need to work out what happens when I think the inevitable comes that 2024 does not result in independence. If we do have a Labour government, yes, the policy will be to change the Gender Recognition Act in the same way as the SNP, but I get the sense from the Labour Party down south, like Yvonne said, they're kind of Tory-like. Keir Starmer is not a gender fanatic. He doesn't believe women have penises. He just doesn't. But he's too scared to say that publicly. So I don't think it'll be a high priority of any Labour government, like it seems to be with the Scottish government currently. But we really have to try and focus and win this argument and focus on the issue of independence. So, because I think that is really the only way we can get rid of the kind of gender fanatics at the top of the Scottish government currently, is with independence. Because at that point, the people of Scotland will be able to vote for parties that they believe in, believe represent them. I think partly, one of the reasons that the SNP are kind of getting away with this is because the people look at their proposal, or what we say about the proposal, saying, oh, that can't be true. They don't actually believe women have penises. They don't actually believe a man can just say he's a woman and becomes a woman. It's so ridiculous that people just don't think it's credible and don't think that's in any way, shape or form going to happen. And that's working in their favour. So we need to stand strong, which I've no doubt with strong women like Yvonne and Eva in this party, that we will remain committed to our position. And the people of Scotland will then judge at the time when they start seeing things happen. They start seeing their small daughter's football team start having young boys in it because they identify as women, or their elderly mothers in care homes having to deal with a male nurse when they request a female nurse because the nurse's feelings is more important than the patient's. Or if you've got your sister or mother is in a refuge sharing rooms with men because they say they're women. It's when these real life realities start to kick in once this Gender Recognition Act is passed, which unfortunately it will be, the numbers are there in Parliament. That's when people start stepping up and asking questions and say, well, who was talking about this? Who was warning us? And that's what our party has been doing, and people will remember that, and people will be thankful in the end, I think.
Just on your point, Alan, I must admit, I didn't think the next general election will be 2024, as Robert was saying, but I think the powers behind the thrones behind it, I think they're trying to move Keir Starmer in there, so I think there's every chance of a general election before 2024. And the thing about Keir Starmer is, he lied to get his position to become the leader of the opposition. He's broke his 10 pledges, and then you've seen that the documentary on Al Jazeera about him as well. I mean, shady. I mean, that's all you can say about Keir Starmer, shady. But people are willing to forget that just to get rid of the Tories, which is something we've got to watch. For us in Scotland, you know, as Yvonne was saying, we've got a choice. You know, I mean, there is a choice of parties, and nothing's going to affect us more than getting independence. We can drop that shirt, we can make our own decisions. Up until then, we're prisoners, you know, and it's up to the SNP to start making sure, singing more vocally and putting it more vociferously. We want independence, and not just sit down there and just take it on the chin, whatever they're giving us, and taking it neatly and walking out, especially the Brexit vote. But on the GRA thing, I think Alex Salmon said it better when he tried to do, well, when he got past the same-sex marriage, he put it out to Civic Scotland. I think that's what we need to do. For the GRA thing, put it out Civic Scotland. Let everybody talk about it. Put it out there. Let it, shine a light on it, let everybody see what's involved, and then that way we'll maybe put the issue to bed once and for all.
Just on that final point, that's the reason that the SNP government do not want it to happen, because when Civic Scotland see what they're proposing, they will cut, they will an apoplexy at the ridiculous nature of the proposal. It's completely ridiculous, and that's why Nicola Sturgeon and many of those in the SNP were so against ALPA. Any media attention we could have got, or any cooperation that could have came, so against it, because they know what we're saying is true and honest, and people of Scotland are with us on that, and they have to keep this under the table, have to keep this very hush-hush quiet, and pretend as if people voted for the SNP for this legislation. They didn't at all. They voted for independence. I voted for the SNP probably for the last time for independence, and it certainly wasn't for anything like gender recognition.
Before I get out to the audience, I'd just like to add my tuppence worth. We know that Nicola Sturgeon thought it was so important that the Supreme Court took a decision on the independence bill because it might conflict with Westminster. It's noted that she hasn't sent the GRA bill down to the Supreme Court to see if it conflicts with the Equality Act. Bit of a coincidence, don't we think?
Considering what's happening actually with, I suppose my real point is I'm so concerned about the propaganda regarding many situations. For instance, what's just been revealed in the European Parliament regarding Pfizer. Remember, people are still hiding in their houses for all that propaganda. And what about NATO as well? Again, more propaganda when we look at all that. When you start doing research, actually start to understand it how you came. But nobody's really speaking the truth. Do we need to have some sort of propaganda kind of classes so people can actually see the propaganda that's right in front of their faces? Because it's getting out of hand now. And somebody has to stand up and say no more. People need to know the truth. People can only evaluate on the truth. And I'm getting really concerned with NATO and America with a nuclear weapons scenario, which Russia have never once mentioned.
They're on the Clyde.
Can't find any mention of Russia. America, different story. So the propaganda is raising it. And right now, where are they? We instantly did. We're a first strike target because of what we've got on the Clyde. Is there anybody going to speak up and actually say anything about what's going on here regarding NATO?
Well, actually, yes, the ALPA party's got a debate tomorrow on whether Scotland and independent Scotland should be in NATO. I know what I'll be speaking at that, I know what I'll be saying, and it's not to join NATO.
I'll try and keep this short. I'm not very good at doing that, actually. In my opinion, everything I've heard today and previous to today, I can't see any other way of sorting any of this out without bringing the SNP down, quite honestly. Can I ask, because I want to know, what do you thought the panel think? Supposing the SNP were brought down, supposing, all the horrendous stuff around the Alex Salmon trials, the GRA reform thing, all the evidence that's beginning to surface now about all the problems around the world. All you've got to do is look at podcasts from New Zealand, Canada, Australia, various other countries. There's a guy on YouTube called EDI Jester, for example, who can trace this back right to the 1950s, this postmodernist cult that's taken over the SNP. So if somebody was to expose all this that's going on either of those two issues, surely that would bring the SNP down. what I want to know is, do the panel think that if that happened, that people would naturally be so disgusted and appalled that they would immediately turn to Alpa and vote for them? And bring about this quicker, because we haven't got 2 or 3 years. What's going to be left by the time we get some sort of vote, whether it's a referendum or a plebiscite? Thank you.
That lady's not going to take 2 questions at once.
I'd just like to ask, when we're talking about the next election, instead of waiting for the SNP to say this is what we're going to do, why can't Alba say let's stand on a plebiscite election, one issue manifesto, and just field candidates for every seat? That's all.
Well, the answer to you, if I can answer the segment first before I pass it to my colleagues, well, the answer is, well, there's nothing to stop us putting a candidate in every seat. But the policy at the moment is we're trying to, if there's going to be a plebiscite election, we're saying, look, make it Scottish United, so we don't cut each other's throats. But the problem, I think, is that Miss Sturgeon doesn't want to do pacts with anyone, especially us. And what if the SNP comes down and crashes and burns? Well, I'll give you a classic example, which was the United Kingdom general election of 1918, when the Irish Parliamentary Party, who were in Westminster and had got comfy and had settled down, not settled up, they were replaced by Sinn Féin. 2 months later, Ireland declared independence. And it happened in an instant, and in politics, things can happen in an instant.
Aye, cheers. Just on your point about bringing the SNP down, I don't think it's the SNP we need to bring down, I think it's the SNP leadership we need to bring down. That's who we need to bring down. And I think, like Roddy was saying, I don't want to get a chance to get back, but I think Roddy said, there's loads of good folk in the SNP. The friends of mine, they're activists as well, they want independence. But the thing is, the strategy at the top of the tree is shocking, absolutely shocking. That's where the blame lies. So I wouldn't say bring down the SNP, no. SNP leadership, absolutely. Get rid of them.
I wholeheartedly agree with what Robert just said there. There are many great people within the SNP still, and they are the people that we need to convince if Alba is ever going to become a party of government or a strong political force in Scotland. So we always have to be wary of when we criticise the SNP, saying and talking in a kind of pejorative way, but as if it's every single person. It's not. It's a very small clique at the very top. And on the point of bringing them down, I would love to be able to sit here today and talk about the horrible, disgusting sham that they tried to fit up Alex Salmond with. Because if people actually understood what happened there, understood the personalities behind it, and understood what went on and the reasons why it went on, then support for the SNP would collapse. That, sure you could. But sadly, that won't happen. We've seen people jailing of journalists in Scotland, so we know things like that will happen. The repressive state will come down. So what we need to do as a movement or as a party, I've seen the most recent poll, 4%, good, we're increasing our vote share. I think people are starting to get sick of the kind of same old from the SNP. I wouldn't be surprised if that extra few percentage came directly as a result of that miserable party conference they had in Aberdeen last week. But what we need to do as a party is continue saying what we're saying, continue doing the groundwork, like I think Kenny talked about today. There's policy officers being employed by the party to do the groundwork that the SNP have completely neglected over the last few years. And we need to be the voice for independence, because I think I said in the speech today, we cannot let the argument be lost in any future vote because of SNP incompetence at the very top. So what we need to do as a party is continue on that, and our time will come. Most governments have a shelf life. We've seen that with this current Tory party. They've fallen off a cliff after 12 years in government. Happened same for Labour Party, 13 years in government. The SNP are sitting around 15. Nicola Sturgeon knows she's running out of road, and that's why I think she's employed this tactic of a plebiscite, despite all the scaremongering of Pete Wishart and for people like that saying that the Scottish people would hate us if we went for a plebiscite, she's finally listened to what ourselves and in the wider movement are saying, because she knows she has to stave off that threat. And if we get to 2026, which I'm really sorry to say I think we will, without any referendum, at that point, that is the make or break election for Alba, and if we need to make gains at the expense of the SNP there to have any chance of having independence within the next decade. Sorry, it's bleak, but that's the situation we find ourselves in.
Just before I give this to you, we talk about we need Nicola Sturgeon to listen. Well, we know she listens to our Eva, because she's been quoting our Eva in her speeches at conference. So, Eva, can you send a message to Nicola?
You'll recognise these words, and I'm going to read them to make sure I don't get them wrong, and there'll be prizes for whoever can tell me first who first said these precious words. I tell ye true, liberty is the best of all things. Never live beneath the noose of a servile halter. Sir William Wallace. And a servile halter is something that I think the SNP leadership are currently suffering under. They have forgotten that they are there to serve us, not themselves or the other invisible masters that they appear to have. I am not a politician, so I am not captured by what some within the SNP leadership or those who aspire to be the SNP leadership are captured by. I have got a job, I have got a life, I have got qualifications, I have a reputation, and the reason why I became a lawyer in the first place was because I believed in justice and truth and honesty and integrity, and these principles are the bedrock of this country. They used to be the principles which were the bedrock of the SNP, and they have become the bedrock of the Alba Party. And because we are honest and we do tell the truth and we have integrity, we will take over when the SNP leadership crumbles, because crumble it will. And so I echo what others have said. The SNP membership and the SNP support comprises some of the kindest, best, most decent people this country will ever produce. Some of them are afraid to speak up. They ought not to be afraid to join us. We don't all bite, but we all want the same thing.
How many people in here were once members of the SNP? Yeah.
Who wasn't a member of the SNP would be an easier question.
So, I moved from London, lock, stock and barrel, and moved up to the Scottish borders because of the SNP. I believed in them. We all in this room believed in them. And the lie cannot continue. There are good people still in the SNP who are still in denial. When did the sudden moment happen with me? It was virtually overnight. And it was after reading the Craig Murray report. And I thought, my God, speaking as a journalist, I couldn't believe that the mainstream media were part of this plot to bring down Alex Salmond. And it was only when I read Craig Murray's piece that I realised exactly what was going on. And I think that many of you are nodding now, and it was in an instant. Once the scales drop from people's eyes, they will, the SNP will either implode or people will jump ship just like we did, and hopefully they'll come and join us. But the SNP are nearing some very dark days ahead now, And I think that little cabal at the top will turn on each other. And when that happens, hopefully we'll be onwards and upwards and ready to welcome the genuine independent supporters, you know, and so that we can all go together in one direction. But time is very limited at the moment. It's very, very limited.
I see a lot of you want to get, and I'll get as many as I can, but I just should say, for all the curry eaters, you might be missing the start of your curry if we don't speed up, so we've only got maybe 15-20 minutes to go. So...
Roddy, I must come back because I have to settle something that was said about me. Thank you. I'm talking to you two guys. Not in an aggressive manner. I just want to correct you. When I said bring down the SNP, I wasn't talking about all the members and all the decent MSPs and MPs. I was talking about head office. I left the SNP after 22 years, not because of my branch or anybody else's branch, but because of what I found out the head office had been up to. And it's even got worse since I left. So that's what I certainly recognise that there are many good people still in the SNP. I'm still friends with a lot of them. The thing is that you mentioned that there's guys and women in the SNP who are, you know, very uncomfortable about head office. Well, why the hell have none of them got the bloody spine to do something about it? You know, the theory is they're making a good living out of what they're doing, you know, and they don't want to rock the boat in that respect. They might be frightened of head office. They might get kicked out of the party. Look, if they get kicked out of the party, come and join us. You know, you know, so I want to just make that clear, and you know, it's about time. You know, like Yvonne said, I agree with a lot of what she said, and she's right in saying that we haven't got much time, very little time. So these people, these good people in SNP at the higher levels, you know, elected level, they need to do something about it for the good of Scotland and for the good of women and girls. Thank you.
Just a quick answer to you. The reason why don't they do it, I will just say Alex Salmond, Mark MacDonald, Margaret Ferrier, Craig Murray, Mark Hurst, Dave Llewellyn, etc. That's why they don't do it. Fear. No, you ask me why. I'm saying because they're feared, they're afraid, they're scared, and they need to find their spines and say enough's enough.
Hi there. As an organiser and an events organiser for marches and different things, and having seen over the last couple of years how things have gone between Alex Salmond, between Dave, between Manny Singh, all these different people who have been let down, basically, by a lot of people. Where do we go forward with this new code of conduct for yesers? I don't really know what we say about that, but we're saying we can do a lot. What can we do with the SNP? But if we can't decide what we're doing with it, conducting to their code, I just don't know where to go next, and I wonder what people thought about it.
One thing we're not talking about here is the other thing that's sneaking in round the background is Devo Max. Here's my worry, and I've been worried about it for a little bit now. Regardless of when the GEs come in, they've never said which GE, by the way. They've never said the next UK GE, or they've never said the next Scottish GE. They've never said which one. The thing is, Labour's ahead in the polls. We can see that. There is a possibility they can get in. My worry is that the SNP are going to do a deal with Labour to help them out in Westminster. with Labour giving the current SNP Devo Max. We all know their past history in the top table. They are devolutionists. And I'm very, very worried about that. And if it comes to Devo Max, what they're doing with the GRA, they're not giving it out to Scotland. And I think they'll do exactly the same if they get offered the Devo Max, and they will bite Labour's hand off for it.
Can I just say that Ian Blackford at the SNP conference had less than 300 people. So the hemorrhaging of the SNP support is happening. They may not yet have joined ALBA, but it's coming. Also, he made a statement that the word we, shouldn't be borrowing international money to pay off our debts. Now, Scotland doesn't have any debts. Ask the panellists, is it time that we took more assertive action? It was suggested that we demonstrate outside Bute House. It's time we stop talking and get some action. Do the panel agree?
Young Mr. Reid is anxious to answer that question for you.
Yeah, I'm anxious to answer it because, first of all, there's not a chance in hell, and I hope I can speak for everyone else in this room, that I will be abiding by any code of conduct any code of conduct that has been drafted up by the Aberdeen independence movement. If you live in Aberdeen, I can tell you that the various characters that are a member of that organisation, or the likes of Pete Wishart, who helped draft up the code of conduct, that will certainly not be happening. But this is one of my bugbears, I think, with the movement as a whole. A little background, I'm currently studying a Masters in Political Activism and Campaigning, and it's essentially about how campaigns become successful, and the literature on it is extremely interesting. They say that over a case study of movements since 1900 to the present day, any movement that has been successful has had the lowest number you need is 3.5% of the population to be active and engaged in a campaign in civil disobedience and direct non-violent action, and you will be successful. Now that figure in Scotland is around 150,000. At its height, All Under One Banner marches had around that number. The whole problem with the Code of Conduct is the movement does not belong to the SNP. It never has, and it never will. It belongs to the people of Scotland, it belongs to the activists, it belongs to all of us here. So we do not need to toe this line, this ridiculous line about the Code of Conduct. We need to get out in the streets, we need to perform in peaceful civil disobedience. Stop toeing the line. And one of my bugbears, I wish Tommy was here, I'd love to speak to him, but the Yestival was cancelled a few weeks ago because the police numbers were drafted down to London. Oh, I'm sorry, that sounds like a Police Scotland problem, not a problem for the people of Scotland. What we should do is, instead of toeing the lines and following every guideline by the bullet, what we should be doing is going ahead with things anyway. Like people, like Martin Luther King did in the 60s, like Gandhi did before him. They didn't wait to the local authorities to agree a checkpoint list about when and where they can and cannot be. We marched in the streets of our capital city. We marched across cities in Scotland and let the people know, let the government know that we want change. And that's the only way we're going to get it. Simply this kowtowing to the government of the day, nicely, as if things are going to be different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again and again and expecting something different. There needs to be a change. And I think as a movement, we should unite together and lead ourselves. That's what will bring about independence, not listening to the government.
Just on the point about AIM, I think that's been set up just to try and get hegemony for the SNPs and block everybody else. They just want to try and make them the Yes movement or the independence movement when it's a broad church. There's so many organisations, no one can in. So I think that was set up to fail, or really just to keep probably just to keep Albert out the official campaign when it happens. I think that's probably what it's done for. We can see through it, you know. I mean, get back to 2013-14, what a broad church it was and what a campaign. Everybody pulled together. We didn't need any code of conduct. Everybody knew what they were going. We were going for independence, and that's the way we wanted to do it. So, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think very few people other than the SNP mob will probably stick to whatever code of conduct it is. I take your point on the activism. I think it's coming anyway. I think you see it bubbling up. People are going to be at Butte House very soon. I think, you know, and it won't take much. I don't think too much to like that paper. I think everybody's sick to the back teeth of it, getting promises and then nothing coming in. Really interested in the point there about the Devo Max. I think it's coming. I think that they're setting us up for it. That boy the other night there on the debate night, no, he's saying your name's an ex-spad, so he was. And then you've got Angus Robertson using words like, we want to get out of this partnership. Well, I'm sorry, it's not a partnership, mate. You know what I mean? We want out some.
She's backing Keir Starmer's national
Listen, nothing surprises me when Nicola Sturgeon now, you know what I mean? She just, and again, I think we're always in here, we're all fed up to the back teeth of the rhetoric. Shows the deeds, shows your actions. We've had enough noise and enough talk, so time to move on, time for a bit of action.
We are not getting angry enough. We need to get more angry. We need to get out onto the streets. We need to get out there in our thousands, tens of thousands. You know, what we really need is a general strike. We need to work with the unions, bring Scotland down to a bloody standstill until we get those corrupt so-and-sos out of Holyrood, and two fingers to the Westminster lot, because it's our business, it's what's happening in Scotland, and we need to get angry. Look at the girls in Tehran, in Mashhad, and all over Iran. Bits of kids, you know, we don't have a morality police, thank goodness, well, we don't want to get down that route, but you know, we're not facing live ammunition. What the hell is stopping us? We need to get angry, we need to get on the streets, we need to get the unions with us and bring Scotland to a standstill until we bloody well get what we want.
You'll remember Dennis Canavan speaking eloquently and often about how politicians were out of touch. I think that I have in recent weeks seen innumerable examples of just how out of touch the SNP leadership is with the people of Scotland. And one of the most obvious examples was the other night when I think the guy was Stephen Noon, who spoke about how if we don't get the right result from the Supreme Court, we're going to have to pause for thought. And there will be a review and there will be reflection. And I didn't really want to have to face the people of Scotland that I know are hungry and cold and sick and scunnered and starving and afraid, because they're no needing to be putting their lives on pause because a gang who are paid handsomely to bring this country to its independence, to its freedom, to self-determination, have neither the strategy, nor the spine, nor the political will so to do. So I say to Stephen Noon, here are some words for you, Stephen, which this time I have stolen from Nicola. She said, and listen very carefully for some free legal advice, always pay attention to the small print. Sturgeon proclaims, I will never ever give up on Scottish democracy. Notice she did not say, I will never ever give up on Scottish independence. Make no mistake about it. The Scottish independence movement does not rely solely upon Miss Sturgeon's will. The Scottish independence movement will never give up, And the determination that we have within that movement today will only become stronger as this winter approaches and becomes harsher. If you think you've seen a winter of discontent before now, by God, you've got it coming. People will be on the streets because we will have our freedom.
I suggest that is the best place to end. As always, as I say every single week, time has beaten us, it always beats us. I'd like to thank you all for being here, for participating, and for supporting us and helping us, because we get hit for a rather large bill, and your generosity has helped us meet the bill, and I thank you all for it. I wish you speedy, enjoy your curry, and if you're going for a curry, I'll see you down there. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.